I don't even know how you do an intro to a video like this. Feels silly. So I had a miscarriage last week and I figured we'd talk about it. I'm picking a time in which I feel the most stable so far to chat about this. I think it needs to be talked about more often in the realm of trying to conceive, because so many women, including myself, go into this journey thinking once I'm pregnant, I have a baby, because nowhere, I don't even remember. I'm trying to think back to high school. I don't even remember when I learned what a miscarriage was. I don't think a lot of us remember that specific moment unless someone in our family has experienced it. And no one in my family has experienced it, and a lot of my close friends are not even at the point yet where they are trying to conceive. And so it feels now even still very far off from my core circle, my day-to-day, who I'm engaging with day to day. And I don't think as a woman we are exposed to the frequency of miscarriages to the point where we truly understand in trying to have a baby that needs to be something that you consider. That like from the very beginning, people tend to warn you, oh, like don't tell people until the second trimester, la la, like you don't know. But they don't say it in a way. I don't feel like anybody really ever said it to me in a way that was like, hey, the reality is that 1 in 4 women who get pregnant experience a miscarriage once in their lifetime. And it is not uncommon for women to have multiple miscarriages. I just didn't think about it. You know, we got pregnant and I thought, that's it, you know. I think so many people say to you when you were young and when you were healthy that, oh, you're young, you're healthy, it's going to be fine. Like, you guys are totally going to be fine. You have nothing to worry about, right? The first thing you're thinking about is like, okay, like, can we even get pregnant? Is that even possible for us? Do we have the ability to actually conceive a child naturally? And I think that fear was there for me a little bit because, and I'll go a little bit into our background with this, but it always sat there a little bit with me because of bodybuilding, and because of the history that Zach and I have had with that and hormone replacements, PEDs, things like that. But I knew that there were on both sides plenty of things that we could do to make sure that our bodies were in a very healthy place when approaching this journey. And, you know, in terms of blood panels, in terms of everything else that we got looked at over the last couple of months on both of our sides, like squeaky clean. You know, we were in a fantastic place with damn near everything on paper. So it felt like there just was no, you know, that there was no risk, that there was nothing to be looking out for, when that's just not the case for anybody ever, no matter how healthy you are. There's a lot of people that I have come out of the woodworks after I started talking about this, or after I posted this on Instagram mentioning it. So many people that I would also consider to be very young, very healthy, and not even with, you know, the past that Zach and I have with bodybuilding, who experience the same thing for, you know, kind of what they tell you is just no reason, just a kind of random chance happening. So Zach and I decided, it was so clear to me in August of last year, so clear to me when I knew that I was ready for us to start having kids. Zach's been ready for a very long time. Zach has wanted to start having children for quite a while. And I was really focused on trying to get back on stage for bodybuilding. And when I decided that it was just time to start trying to have kids, it was right after I decided, obviously, that like I didn't really want to bodybuild anymore. Like my heart truly wasn't in it. And I was thinking like, okay, like if I am going to be pursuing bodybuilding over the next 3 to 5 years, my body's going to take a hit. And then we would start trying to have kids between, I don't know, 33 and 35. And that felt very late. And it is, you know, like the older you get, the lower quality your eggs are, the more abnormal eggs you have. It's just the case with everybody ever. That's just how the science of it works. So I really thought about that. And I thought about the strain that was going to be put on my body if I were to be competing for another 3 to 5 years. And I just thought, I'm not really willing to take that risk because I do want children. I want 2 kids. So that decision came in like, I think June or July of last year. And by August, after we saw My Chemical Romance 2 times, I just kind of had this epiphany of like, I'm so ready to do this. And I knew Zach was too. But Zach has been on hormone replacement therapy, testosterone, for about 5 years. He was prescribed it right around the time that we met, actually, about a year after we met. And so I also knew that there would probably be an aspect of that we had to consider in trying to conceive. But we were going to be very lax about it. We were like, we're going to take this very chill. We're not going to obsess. We're not going to make any like major changes or anything right now. We're just going to see if it can happen. And so I would say like September-ish, October-ish of last year is when we said, okay, like with no clear changes, we're just going to like we're just going to stop trying to not get pregnant. Yeah, if that makes sense, and just see if it happens. And so a couple months went by, December rolls around, and I'm not pregnant yet. Granted, that's maybe 2, 3 full actual cycles of us being kind of like carefree about it. And I said, hey, I do think that you're probably going to have to come off of hormone replacement therapy to make this work, because I have read up on the science of it. And I think it just makes sense that that's probably going to be what we have to do. And Zach was so willing to do so. He's done everything he's needed to do to come off of that, has no intentions of going back on it at all whatsoever, to like really get his hormones and everything in a place where his body was doing what it needed to do. I also have an incredibly regular, normal cycle, always have. I've been off of birth control for like, I don't know, 3-4 years now. So I, again, still had my worries, but I was like, okay, they say that it takes about 3 to 6 months after coming off of hormone replacement therapy for men to kind of regenerate everything and potentially conceive. And so we were thinking, June, July is probably when we would be getting potentially be getting a positive test. If he came off everything in January, then we'd be potentially getting a positive test maybe in June or July if everything lined up correctly. And if not, then I was going to go in and get, ultrasounds, get all my stuff checked and looked at, because my blood panels were already showing that like I was perfectly within range for pretty much every single thing. To our surprise, May 19th, this is where I'm going to reel it in so I don't get emotional. To our surprise, May 19th, I'm a day late on my period, and I'm never, ever, ever, ever late. We get a positive test, and it was just so much faster than we thought. We were prepared to do this for a while before we even got close to a positive test, and so that felt like a huge win. It was like, wow, this was so much easier than we thought. Like, I'm working, you're working, like. If you look at like the cycles of things, it really only took from him coming off of things in January to my ovulation in mid-April to be where we needed to be on both sides to get pregnant. So that was great news, and we just felt like everything after that point was going to be easy peasy. All of my hormones were in the right place, my HCG and progesterone in the right place. They did put me on a progesterone supplement from the beginning, because they said, hey, your progesterone's a little bit low, but like we're not super worried about it. And by the next blood test, my progesterone was way up there. Like everything was exactly where it needed to be. But I was so early, like I was exactly like 4 weeks when we found out, and they didn't even want to see me for a scan. They couldn't even get me in for a scan until 9 weeks. And we were both kind of like, we don't really need to go in and go to one of those private facilities to get an additional scan, because we're just going to wait. We're just going to be patient, and we're going to be positive, and everything's going to be great. And my mantra was, everything is going to be fine, because I've decided that everything is going to be fine. And man, I wish I like really could trust that mantra now, because that just, already feeling like now I kind of got knocked off the high horse I was on, in the sense of being like, well, I've decided it will be good, so it will be good. It feels a little silly now, because truly it's just within no one's power. It's just like, it is going to be what it is going to be, what it is going to be. And I'm not a religious person, neither is Zach. And so for us, it's like not up to, you know, some divine being, a God in general, whatever, like an Abrahamic God. It's just what it is. Like the science of it is kind of what I understand the science of it most, and that is kind of what I lean on in the explanation of things. But yeah, that was just kind of how I was going to approach it. I was going to be, as I was trying to control my anxiety. I feel like I can be a very anxious person, but I don't like to lean into that. So I was doing everything I could to just be calm and not worry and be like, you know what, I'm going to enjoy this pregnancy. It's going to be fun. It's going to be beautiful. I can't wait to tell people. Like, you just start making plans immediately because it all just happened for you, right? And so I told like my best friends. I told a couple of my best friends, and of course, like those are the people that like no matter what happens, I want them to know anyway. And then we told our very close friend group here in Austin, which is us and 3 other couples, because we were traveling with them to Mexico City for a birthday week. And they know that I like a cocktail. When we go out to eat, I usually get like an espresso martini. I was doing espresso martini reviews for a while all over Austin. I'm not like a heavy drinker. I would have maybe 1 or 2 drinks a week or so when we would go out. Never really drank at home because they knew that I was very casual and lax around these things. I was very lax around a cigarette, a vape. I was very lax around alcohol. Like it wasn't something that I was never a sober person fully. I knew that they would pick up on it pretty immediately if I went hardcore sober. That's kind of what I'm trying to say. When we were in Mexico City, of all places, I also love sushi. And if I'm like, you know, on this trip with my friends and immediately saying no to a lot of things I usually casually say yes to, they were gonna know. So I thought, it's really early and it's scary to tell people this early. We're not even gonna tell our family until the 2nd trimester, but we might as well tell our friends because they're gonna figure it out anyway. And it's gonna be easier for me to navigate this vacation if our friends know why I might be acting kind of weird. I already started to get a little bit of nausea. And I mean, I guess we'll kind of like define the terms of the miscarriage at this point. I was 9 weeks when we went in for the ultrasound, but our baby stopped growing at 6 weeks. So I had a missed miscarriage. I had very little signs that anything was wrong. And we didn't even leave for our trip to Mexico City until I was a little past 7 weeks. So we lost our baby before we even went on that trip. And I remember the day before we left, or even the day that we left, like I had a huge round of nausea. Like I couldn't even stand the smell of a man in the gym. I was having plenty of symptoms because my hormones had gone so high up. My hormones, my body very much was like, you are pregnant. Like my body was acting that way. And my body never really stopped acting that way because it was missed, right? Like when the baby stopped developing, my hormones stayed high. My hormones did not signal to my body. My body did not recognize that things had stopped. You know, I think the gestational sac continued to even grow because I remember seeing the ultrasound. It looked bigger. It looked like it should have, you know, a baby filling it, and there was only about half of it that was full. And so we tell our friends, and I have probably another, you know, we told our friends probably right around when the baby stopped growing, sadly. And I'm having my symptoms, and we have this trip, and I'm, you know, so cautious this whole trip because I'm thinking, I can't get food poisoning, I can't get sick, I can't get any bacterial thing that's so dangerous for the pregnancy. I was very anxious the whole trip. I had no idea that the baby had already stopped growing. I still had symptoms. I still had these moments on the trip early on where I was still very nauseous. And certain foods I was just feeling like I couldn't handle the smell of the hot dogs being cooked on like outside on the streets and the sidewalks. I usually love those things, and I could not handle the smell of them. So I felt so pregnant. Which felt good to me. But honestly, by the time that we were coming back from Mexico City, I felt like I was losing a lot of my symptoms. And I don't want to like scare anybody because there's plenty of things online that people say that like between week 8 and 10. You lose your symptoms, they come back. Like there's all these things. Like there's no rhyme or reason to anything. It just happens. But I felt like I lost some of my symptoms. My progesterone, like the symptoms that you kind of get from progesterone, because I was supplementing it per their suggestion, I still had tender breasts. Like there were little things I still had, but that was because my body still really believed that I was pregnant. But there were things that, like the nausea almost completely disappeared by the time that we were going in for this scan. And it's not like I ever felt disconnected from this baby. I know that people say like there are times where like they knew something was wrong because they felt disconnected. Like we wanted this baby so bad that there was never a moment in which I felt like I was disconnected. But there were definitely, like I was having these tiny, tiny little, like, I wouldn't even say they were like cramps. Like when all the way up until like 6.5 weeks, I was having that kind of like feeling in my uterus where I could sense my uterus. Like I could sense that something was changing there, and that tapered off too. And I should have known, you know. Actually I shouldn't, I won't even say that. I shouldn't have known. This is my first time doing any of this. How would I have fucking known anything? Because again, it's not even talked about, but like, I felt like at the beginning, I was so naturally just like putting my hand on my belly, or like putting my hand kind of like on my uterus as responses to those like little kind of like feelings, those little twinges and stuff like that. Cause I'd be like, oh, like I'm pregnant. And then by the time we were getting back from Mexico City, I kept being like, man, I haven't even like put my hand on my belly today. Like it was kind of like my brain was starting to disconnect from all the little things I was doing out of worry because certain things weren't happening anymore. But we wanted this baby so bad that I refused to believe that anything had stopped happening. I was like, I'm just gonna have a very easy first trimester. It's just gonna be easy for me. I'm just like not gonna have any nausea and it's gonna be really chill. So obviously we go in for the scan and she, puts the wand in me. I'm supposed to be 9 weeks. We had a really wonderful OB. She put my wand in, a transvaginal wand, and did the like scan on my stomach. And she said, first she said, so here we see the gestational sac. Things are a little bit abnormal. And when she said that, I was like, I just knew. Like there wasn't having it be abnormal right off the bat. And I should say this, actually, I did have like a very tiny, tiny, tiny bit of spotting the week leading up to it. And I had the tiniest bit of spotting in Mexico City. And at that point, our baby had already stopped developing. So that was my body trying. But it was like a singular drop of the most like diluted pink discharge. Like it wasn't like dark red blood. And they say online, of course, like if it's not dark red, if it's not increasing, you have nothing to worry about. And so genuinely thought I had nothing to worry about. I was always trying to talk myself down from it when I had seen it. Because there are plenty of people who have a ton of spotting through a pregnancy and nothing bad ever happens. So with that, as soon as she said what I'm seeing is abnormal, I just knew immediately. Like she continued to just kind of state things matter-of-factly, measure things on the screen for me, point things out. And then she said, I'll try to listen for a heartbeat. She said, it's measuring at 6 weeks. But right now you should be at about 9. And then when she like did the thing to listen for the heartbeat and there was no heartbeat, it was just kind of like, and there you go, right? Like I wasn't going to, I had plenty of questions and I'm in that moment, of course, like trying to hold myself together. But your first thought is like, wow, okay, so like all of my fears and my, my biggest nightmare is currently coming true. So you like, what do you do but just kind of like freeze up in that moment? I look over at Zach and we just kind of have that moment of recognition of like, okay, so we are about to go through this really shitty, very hard thing. And like, here it is. Like it kind of just feels like you're at the top of the roller coaster as it's starting to kind of make its way down, and you're making decisions at that point of knowing it's about to go down as to like, how do I respond to this? Like, how do I make it through this knowing how fucking hard it's about to be? Am I going to scream and cry right now? Like, what am I going to do? What do I need to know? What questions am I going to ask? Like, how do I manage this thing that I've never had to go through before and just did not expect? Obi left the room, let me get dressed. Obviously gave me some time with Zach to just like start the tears. And then came back and answered all of my questions. And she said kind of everything that Google says is that just, I think it's like 70% of early term miscarriages, especially ones that happen at 6 weeks, because technically my miscarriage was at 6 weeks, even though we found out at 9 weeks. My miscarriage happened somewhere between 6 and 7. And she said that this was just probably a chance thing. A chromosomal abnormality is what they say, which just means it could have had too many chromosomes, too few chromosomes. It just happens. And it just happens. That's why, she said 1 in 3 women. Based on the stats I've looked up and like understood about this particular situation, it's like 1 in 4 women who experience a pregnancy. It's not 1 in 4 pregnancies. I think it's like anywhere from 10 to 25% of pregnancies end in miscarriage, but 1 in 4 women who get pregnant in their lifetime experience a miscarriage. And I just at that point like accepted that it was just chance. And because my heart, the first thing they said to me when I got in there, your hormones are looking great, because they test you on everything before they start your scan. Hormones are looking great. And again, Zach and I are completely healthy people. We really do take care of ourselves. We have a little fun, but like very much take care of ourselves. As soon as I found out I was pregnant, I changed every single thing I possibly could to be like, the healthiest pregnant person. Changed my skincare, did this, did that, the other thing. So I just, in getting that news, was like, I don't need to have things tested. Like I know that it's an option to have the embryo tested or the fetus tested, depending how far along you are. I know a lot of people are very insistent on calling it a baby, and if that's what works for you, that's the terminology that works for you. This is like with my story and my miscarriage, so I'm going to say the things that I want to say and explain it how I want to explain it in a way that works for me and makes me feel comfortable. So at that point, we hadn't even fully progressed to scientifically being at a point with a fetus. We still had an embryo, I think, in a fetal pole. I think that's kind of where we were at. I could look that up, but that, from my understanding, is kind of where the development stopped. And so I felt like she recommended a D&C because it was a missed miscarriage, which means they go in. I was under general anesthesia. I know some people do it under local anesthesia, but I was very much so wanting to be under general anesthesia. She was able to book me in the next morning. She also did it. She performed it. Booked me in the next morning. They put you under, they go in, they dilate your cervix, they clean all of the pregnancy tissue out, and it takes about 15 minutes, and you wake up. And in doing that and getting a D&C, you can request to have things tested. But with a 6-week embryo, it being our first pregnancy, our first miscarriage, and it just kind of happening that way, I didn't feel like I needed to have it tested, because it would probably come back and be exactly what she's saying, just some kind of genetic abnormality that isn't something you can pre-test for unless you're going through IVF. And this was just a natural conception. And so knowing, whether or not it was like a trisomy 20 or trisomy 19, 16, whatever, wasn't really going to help me understand like the why of it all, right? Like it just still would have been chance that happened, and it can happen to anybody. But also with that, in not getting it tested, you're kind of left with that fear of, can it happen again? And it can. I think that's the scariest part for me, is that like statistically, it's a very low percentage of women who experience 2 in a row. But statistically, I thought, I was probably in the category where I had a low chance of miscarriage, and I still experienced it. And so I think that, in just kind of, going through the DNC, going through a miscarriage, going through a DNC, and it all happening for the first time, and it happening kind of quickly, all these things right after I found out, and all the research I did within those first 24 to 48 hours, I just thought, okay, I'm just going to go through this one. I'm just going to go through this one. I'm not going to do any testing. I'm not going to go get, you can't even get a recurrent pregnancy loss panel done until you've had multiple miscarriages. And I'm like, I'm not going to convince myself that it's just going to happen again, even though that's currently, a week out from my miscarriage. That's the dooming feeling that I'm facing right now. Like, I'm heartbroken about the loss, truly heartbroken that I am not pregnant anymore. In some way, shape, or form, I feel grateful that it happened sooner rather than later. And I think that a lot of women, even as hard as it is to kind of find, I don't feel like there was a silver lining in any of this, right? Like, I'm not really grateful that this happened in any capacity. I'm pissed. I'm sad. I'm pissed. I'm all of these emotions. But I am looking at it and saying, hey, it could have been way, way worse. And obviously it could have been way, way better. We could have ended up with a baby, and we didn't. I still had a miscarriage. I still have trauma to work through. I could have worse trauma. It could have been dealt with in a lot worse ways. I could have been farther along. I don't want to minimize anything that I'm going through with all of this, or that anything that anybody else is going through, but this is kind of how I'm processing things, of just kind of could have been a lot worse. But do I have now this intense fear that it's just going to happen again? Absolutely. And that is the hardest part, I think, for me, is what if it happens again? And I don't know if that is actually what every woman trying to conceive goes through when their first pregnancy is also a loss. I think it's a very unique position to be in the realm of miscarriages, because I see a lot of the stories online of I miscarried after my first. Well, you have a baby. and I'm just trying to be really raw and honest through this whole video of my thoughts, because that's what had helped me. Because that's what's helped me so much, is the raw and honest takes from other women. I think just Mans, I think her name is, on Instagram, Amanda. Her takes have helped me a lot too, because she's just been so fucking blunt with it. When your first pregnancy is successful and you have a baby, when you have a child and you experience a miscarriage, I'm not going to say it's any less heartbreaking, but it's different. Because you got to enjoy one pregnancy that was successful and peaceful, and you did it. And this was my first, and it didn't work out. So all I have so far is the experience of it not being peaceful, not being successful. And there is definitely an aspect of jealousy for me when I see the stories of miscarriages with women who already have 1 or 2 kids, because it's at least you got started, right? At least you have a family, at least you have children, at least you have some success stories. I don't even have that to lean back on right now. I don't even know if my body can do it. I don't know what lies ahead. I don't know if I have to go through this again, because I might, now it's just, the reality is I might. It's happened to me once, could happen again, even though the rate of recurrent miscarriages is low, it's not 0. So right now I'm dealing with this in a number of ways. I am kind of just letting myself feel what I'm going to feel through this, and not telling myself I need to be on any kind of timeline with things. Ideally, we would really like to just try to get pregnant again right away, but with a DNC, with any kind of miscarriage, your body is going to have a lot of the pregnancy hormones, like a higher HCG, for a couple of weeks. So and I did this yesterday, I've decided I wanted to test once or twice a week to just kind of track how my hormones go. Peed on a stick yesterday and it just still shows up like you're pregnant, right? Which I think is also one of the harder things, is that like your body takes so much time to adjust to the fact that it's not pregnant anymore when it is a missed miscarriage, because your body was acting as if it was pregnant the whole time. Even if the embryo stopped developing, your body kept acting like it was pregnant. Mine did. So the progesterone drop, I'd say coming out of anesthesia and coming out of like the pain meds and stuff, I think the first day of the DNC, like your mood's elevated artificially. And I just remember I was like, oh, I'm going to be fine. I woke up from the DNC, Zach's there with me, and I was like, I'm going to do my little Duolingo. I'm like learning Japanese and French and Spanish, and I'm like, do. And I knew it was a little bit of an artificial mood elevator from the pain meds, but I was like, I'm going to get through this. This is going to be okay. 24 hours later, back to just, crying again. So there's that aspect of things, that emotional roller coaster. And I think your progesterone drops pretty quickly, especially because I had the supplemental progesterone, just obviously stopping taking that as soon as we found out. That I think drops pretty quickly, but your HCG takes time. So yesterday, I got my DNC on Wednesday. On Friday and Saturday, I emotionally felt the lowest of the lowest of the lows. So like, day 3, day 4, as your progesterone, your hormones are just tanking, you are feeling incredibly depressed, not only because you lost your baby, but because all of your hormones are just doing a free fall. So that was tough. I knew it was coming. That was tough. I also usually get some lingering anxiety from the anesthesia. I had the same thing after I got my boobs done. I had like a week or two where like I would just get a lot of random anxiety towards nothing in particular, very tight chest, having to focus on my breathing. I expected that this time, and it's not as bad as it was because I wasn't under for a really long time compared to my boob job, but I knew that was coming, so I can kind of work through that a little bit better this time around, knowing why it's there. I'm not anxious thinking there's something wrong with me. I'm like, oh, this is the effects of the anesthesia. It's kind of like a withdrawal symptom that you get, because I think they use like fentanyl or something. I don't know what they put in that stuff, but that's not a good time. I also get this thing called hypnic jerk that makes falling asleep the first couple nights after anesthesia really hard. You like feel like you're falling and you like jerk awake like 20 times in a row. So I had that too, but I slept pretty good the last 2 nights. And then with the DNC also, I think, bleeding is a little bit different for everybody. The day of, I had a fair amount of blood, but it wasn't anything crazy, what I expected. And then it fully stopped, I think, for about a day or two, and then it came back. And so I'm kind of going through that right now, a couple of days of, I kind of consider it like a period. I know that's not exactly what it is, but the hormonal shift that happens with all the hormones crashing down is triggering your body to shed things, even though it's been taken out of you by the DNC procedure. Your body's still kind of shedding things. So I'm in that spot right now where I'm just bleeding. And it's tough. Like every time you go to the bathroom, it's tough. Like you just kind of are aware of what's happening to your body, and you can't really forget about it throughout the day. And I do think that that's kind of the other thing that people don't really understand about miscarriages, that I didn't at all understand about a miscarriage, is that like it's not just this kind of thing where it happens and it's done. It's that like, yeah, you're gonna be facing the emotional effects of it for a while. You're grieving. You're grieving the loss of something and or someone. Like if you were at a point where you had a baby forming and you reach that point, or to you, I mean, again, depending on who you are and what you believe, if that was a baby at the point of conception to you, then that's what you're grieving. And I know that people can look at the emotional component and think, man, like that's emotionally going to be really hard to deal with for a long time because of the grief. I don't think most people understand that the physical component of it isn't just a singular day. Whether or not you get a DNC, the physical aspect, like going through a natural miscarriage and passing the tissue all on your own and not getting the procedure, can be a multi-day thing. It could take several days. Sometimes it doesn't even happen to completion, and women still need to get a DNC to get all that tissue out, even if they didn't want to have to do that, right? Like, it's just such a complex thing to have to go through. And I do think that's why it's so important to talk about in a very raw way, because how is the basis of life procreation? And yet in this modern day and age where we are so connected, we don't actually have transparency around these things to the point in which we are fully, as women, from the beginning, educated as to the risks and the process of these things. Like, we shouldn't have to go, as women, we should not have to go to medical school to understand the basics of what can happen throughout this journey. And I just don't feel as though for half of our population, I mean, men should understand this stuff too, but for the women who have to actually physically experience this, how is it that you have to actually put in so much effort to understand these things, and yet we're in school for so long? That's what I don't understand. It's like, how are we in school for so long and we focus on learning so many things, and yet we don't focus on learning about our body and learning about childbirth, learning about pregnancy, learning about miscarriage, learning about all these things that can happen, the risks, trolley-lolly-la. And I think that in knowing these risks, that these things could happen to you in trying to build a family, I think that a lot of women are going to still choose to do this again and again and again. I'm not saying that it would deter a lot of women, most women really, from trying to have kids. I think that for a lot of women, that's just a natural drive that exists in our biology, and we are willing to take the risks. I know that I'm willing to take the risk several times over. But I also understand that, like, in learning about these things, a lot of women who choose to be child-free is because they see the implications, they see the risks, they see what other people go through, and they go, you know what, I'm opting out. I don't ever want to have to risk that. I don't want to ever have to go through that. I don't want to take that chance. And I think that's just so fair. I think it is just so fair. It's just that going through this has changed my outlook on so many things, but hardened me in my stance of being a, pro-choicer, pro-free healthcare, pro-free birth control access, and still deeply in support of my friends who choose to be child-free. Like, I celebrate that for them as much as they would celebrate my pregnancy, or did. My closest friends who did celebrate my pregnancy. Another reason I really wanted to make this video was to kind of talk about how I'm dealing with everything from the perspective of someone who isn't religious, because a lot of the creators that I watched, a handful of them, talked a lot about different parts of scripture that really helped them, or the relationship with God that helped them. And I think if that is who you are and that genuinely helps you work through things, then that is going to be effective for you. And I love that for them, right? Like, if that is how you were raised and like how your mind conceptualizes things and processes the world, that is going to be an incredibly effective and comforting thing for you. I think that when other people say to someone who isn't religious, like myself, or like to Zach, well, you just need to trust in God, or you just need to lean into Jesus, or whatever. It's not as simple for us as just kind of flipping that switch on. If you are a person who was raised to believe in that way, and you trust that and you respond to that, and you've always responded to that, and like literally your thoughts, your schema, your brain operates in that context, it will work for you. It doesn't just go into the switch flipping for us, because our thoughts, our brain, our schema, the way that I process the world doesn't work like that. So when I have to process grief, and you know, I've lost a couple grandparents. I lost my little cousin to suicide. I think it's like what, 7 years ago now, maybe more. Processing that kind of grief is unique and hard and nuanced for every single person. And for me, I've obviously found a lot of solace in communicating with other women who have had to process a miscarriage, but also women who have had to process a miscarriage without doing it under the context of a specific religion. Like I said, Just Mans is someone that comes to mind on Instagram. I've actually deleted Instagram off of my phone. That was one of the things I had to do. I deleted Instagram off of my phone. I made a post kind of speaking about this, and then I've just decided I'm going to be away from it for a while, because I have a lot of friends in the online space that are pregnant right now, and I want to continue to have joy for them and their experience without needing to consume their content, because it will be triggering for me. I think that, like, you know, them having their babies is going to be so wonderful, and I cannot wait to engage with them in that capacity when I am ready, but I'm not going to put the pressure on myself to consume all of their baby content, their pregnancy content, because again, like I don't want to develop resentment towards people. I don't want to be angry at the little baby things. I don't want to be angry at my friends. I don't want to, I actually just found out yesterday that Zach had told me that a friend of ours is, I think, about to enter her second trimester, but hasn't announced it yet. And I, you know, initially was like, oh, that's so awesome. That's so exciting. And then followed with the kind of, you know, pang of jealousy that's like, oh, that was about to be me. And then kind of the sadness of like, man, it would have been so cool to go through this with her. How cool would it have been to do this together? So there's the sadness in that. And then but I gotta say, like, I was really happy that the first thing I felt still was joy for her. And that's where I want to stay. I don't want people to feel like they can't tell me these things, that they have to, especially my closest friends, that if they get pregnant, if they are in their second trimester, whatever, if they are starting to try to conceive, I don't want them to feel like they can't tell me. I want no one to bear the burden of safeguarding my emotions. I don't think that's fair. I think that my triggers are my triggers to manage, and I can say no to the things that I need to say no to, yes to the things I feel brave enough to put myself around. But in navigating this world at this age with so many women around me that are about to go through this journey, I want to stay in a very good place without having to force myself to do that. So stepping away from Instagram is part of my healing journey. I'm gonna maybe see if I can just spend more time trying to make YouTube happen. I've said for 10 years that I would, and I've never really been consistent with it, but I've been the most consistent with Instagram. So I think, you know, picking up a new project, a new place to create content would be really good for me, because I do like content creation. And obviously, like I've said, like consuming other people's content who have gone through miscarriages has been incredibly helpful for me. So maybe continuing to create content around it can be helpful. I've also, I think at first was trying to kind of understand like the karmic implications of this. You know, what did I do to deserve this maybe, or is there something that's going to come out of this? You know, I am not a person that thinks that everything happens for a reason. That is not my mantra. I don't feel like there's any kind of divine plan meant for me specifically, but I do feel as though I can lean into it if I feel, I can lean into the direction of something that I am being called towards. And when I first started this channel and when I first started social media, it was really all about helping women and helping them find confidence. First, in YouTube, it was veganism, but then later evolved into the realm of fitness and just helping women become more confident in their bodies. That has always been something I've been very passionate about. And even in leaning in to the idea of creating style boxes and thrifting and kind of starting this business where I was helping women, learn how to dress themselves in an affordable way, a lot of it still was tied to helping women be confident, just helping women in general. There's a little butterfly that just flew by. I love that. I will take signs from the universe like that. Big butterfly person. As I'm talking about this too, like those are the things that I will take. The thing I tell myself right now is I didn't necessarily have to go through this for a reason, but I can give myself a reason to take this and use it in a positive way that gives me something to do with it all and all of these emotions. And I think that talking about it, creating content about it, and supporting other women who are going to inevitably in this life go through it. I'm not the last person to ever go through a miscarriage. I think that using it in that way is my reason, right? Like I have to create the reason for myself. And I'm happy to do that. I'm so glad, I'm so thankful for all the women that have reached out to me individually and have said, like, I've gone through this too, I know where you're at. It was really special for me when I was at the hospital getting ready to go in for my procedure, and the nurse that was getting me set up said, she asked me, is this your first miscarriage? And I said, yes. And she asked me if it was my first pregnancy, and I said, yes. And she said, I'm so sorry. I've been where you are. And I don't like the idea of necessarily commiserating with people, but it takes a little bit of the sting out of it when you know that someone else just gets it. And I think I felt the same way when I lost my cousin to suicide. It is not like losing a, grandparent. It's not like losing someone to sickness. Losing someone who chose to go is a very different thing, and I just don't think that people need to try to equate grief, like, oh, I lost this person in my life. I know it wasn't suicide, but I know how you feel. You don't need to say that if you haven't actually gone through exactly what I'm going through. I've experienced a miscarriage, and therefore other women who have also experienced miscarriages know how it feels. And that's it. Like, other type of grief doesn't need to try to be equated to this, other types of loss. And I've seen that in comment sections too, where people have been like, well, I haven't experienced a miscarriage, but I lost so-and-so through this and it was traumatic, so I kind of get what you're feeling. We don't need to necessarily try. If we don't have the same experience as someone else, we don't have to try to say, I get it. We can just say, hey, I'm here for you. I'm so sorry, and I'm here for you. Like, that is enough. That actually is completely and totally enough. So know that if you are someone who hasn't gone through this, and you're thinking about other people in your life that you might be supporting who have, understand that you don't have to say, I get it. And you don't need to necessarily tell your grief story to try to commiserate with them. You can just be there. You can just listen. You can just do things for them. Like, we told our friends, the close friend group that we told here that we were pregnant, when we told them that that I was experiencing the miscarriage, they prepared for us like a week's worth of food and just like showed up, put it all in my fridge, and then left and let me be. And I needed that. Like, I still haven't really seen a lot of people because I'm not ready to yet. Like, I'm not really ready to talk about it with them face to face yet. I know as soon as I see my friend Jess, I'm just gonna fucking cry. And I'm like not ready to just cry more and more and more yet. So having all of them come over and just like put the food in my fridge, put the food in my freezer, have it all labeled on like how to cook things and la 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 was so helpful. That was so impactful because none of those women had ever gone through this before. So I didn't need them to tell me that or to tell me their grief stories. These were my closest friends here. They just supported me in the best way that they could. And it was beyond enough. It was more than I could ever expect. And it was so incredibly helpful. So leaning into the help that is offered is getting me through it. talking about it is getting me through it. I ordered a book called The Miscarriage Map, I think it is. I'll link it in the description. That's helping a little bit. I'm reading that right now. Makes me feel less alone. I have a journal prompt book that was suggested on a Reddit thread that should arrive today, so I'm going to write. I think writing helps me a lot too. And ultimately finding a way to use this feeling, to use this experience, and stepping away from Instagram, channeling the energy that I do have to create something. I'm starting up TikTok UGC. Like, it's a really big shift from being like, fuck consumerism, fuck capitalism. I buy mostly thrifted things, and now all of a sudden I'm like, I'm just gonna do fucking TikTok UGC. And like just creating UGC content for brands that are even outside of TikTok. I'm just gonna lean into that because I know it's something that I'm good at. And I just want to have something to dive into and just like disconnect from emotionally. And I know that is kind of selfish in a sense, and it doesn't necessarily match up with like the original plan that I had. Pretty big 180 from being like, okay, I'm going to create this business that's centered around thrifting. I know that business would be tied to Instagram, and I'm like really hard passing on being on that app right now. For some reason, I've taken so much time off of TikTok that my TikTok feed is the farthest thing from anything having to do with pregnancy. And it's not like, I don't even really follow a lot of friends on TikTok. It was just always kind of like, it was just like a side thing. So now that now that I have this time where I am healing, I'm focusing on myself, and I'm like, hey, I have this skill in content creation and I don't want to be on Instagram. I think I'm going to lean into YouTube. I think I'm going to really try to just rack up TikTok UGC and probably still be like fashion and beauty related. Trying to make good decisions as to what I am promoting on TikTok. Still probably thrifting a lot of my own wardrobe. I love to thrift. I think that's still such a valuable thing to do. And I will probably circle back to that idea later on when I'm ready to be back in the Instagram space. But yeah, I think I'm just gonna go nuts on UGC and put my time into creation there. Reading the books, doing the journaling prompts that I need to do, talking to people about it. I think that for me, I was thinking about this morning, I've added meditation to my daily list of things that I need to do. I meditated this morning. First thing I did was meditate and just kind of sit with my feelings. I will get through it and I will figure it out. We will get through it, we will figure it out, and I am pretty dead set on us having what we want in this entire process. I think it's very plausible that within the next 10 years, I have 2 kids. I just think that that is a very fair thing for me to say will happen because I put that intention out there, and that we will have 2 kids that I have naturally. And if it doesn't, Zach and I have always said from the very beginning that whatever life we get handed, we are going to live to the fullest, and that we are going to enjoy, and we are going to be happy with each other. We know that it is not detrimental to our marriage if we don't end up having kids, though that's something that we want so bad. Even right after Zach and I got married, actually I think it was right after we got engaged, there was a time where we were flying back from the Philippines, and we were surrounded by a bunch of like families and a lot of screaming kids. And we were not in the headspace yet. We were ready for children. But in that moment, I just remember thinking, like, do I really even want to go through that? Because I wasn't thinking about anything else in that moment except for the fact that, like, there were a bunch of screaming children around me, and it was a lot. I just remember asking myself, do I even want children? Like, is that even something that I'm so sure I want in my life? And obviously now we're at a point where I am so very sure of that, and the fact that this is going to be a journey to now getting exactly what I want, that since having full clarity on it. I just remember bringing that up to Zach and saying, what if I don't end up wanting kids? Like, what if I don't want that? And he said, then we don't have kids. And I felt so secure in that answer, because Zach has always been that person. Like, Zach is gonna have fun in his life no matter what. He has his wants, he has his desires, but he is gonna enjoy his life. And he's not gonna attach himself to any singular outcome that he knows he's not necessarily in control of. And he is so decided on being my partner. And I am so grateful for that. I think that getting through this is so much easier because I have him. And I know that no matter what the outcome is of the next pregnancy or any other pregnancies that we have ahead of us, I will have Zach. And our future is not contingent upon me bearing a bunch of children or like the next one being successful. Our relationship and our marriage is built off of our love for each other and the life that we just want to live together no matter what. So that is how I am getting through it. I've yapped for so long now. I think I'm gonna wrap this up. I just wanna say that if you're going through this, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Don't undervalue how important it is for you to share your story with other people, with other women, with anybody in your life, and just be vocal about it. Your voice and your story and who you are and what you've experienced is so important. If you're willing to share that in the comments, I think it can be very helpful to other women. It doesn't have to be a successful story. It can just be your story. So thank you all for spending this time with me. And I love you all so much.